everybody. Welcome to the Chad and Sam Sports Hour. I'm Sam Mullen here with Chad Trine, and we're just going to be breaking down the sports of the week. Now, let's go into some big changes going on in football, both NFL and NCAA. These are head coaching changes. Chad, let's start with Texas. Take it away.
Texas is going to be an intriguing team to watch this upcoming season. Charlie Strong coming in after Mac Brown resigning, making the best decision for both him and the team after 16 seasons at Texas. Charlie Strong enters coming from Louisville, where he spent 4 years, racking up a 37-16 record with Louisville Cardinals, which is amazing given the talent that they have and the conference that they played in. I'm interested in seeing how he brings this defensive style back to Texas. With them losing Case McCoy, I believe is going to be graduating.
They will be losing Jackson Shipley. I think that is one thing I am confident in saying. But I think you were trying to jump into he was a defensive coordinator at Florida, and that was before and after Urban Meyer came in. Obviously had a lot of success with Urban Meyer, 2 national championships. He's got a winning pedigree, and this is exactly the type of thing that Texas is looking for.
And what's interesting is Charlie Strong wasn't even their first choice. All the reports led to them looking at people like Nick Saban, which his wife isn't going to let him leave Alabama. That's not going to happen. And you had these other coaches, that James Franklin, who we'll get into later, just coaches that look good on paper, that sound good, but the fit probably wasn't the best. And there are some people, even now after Charlie Strong is hired, aren't really happy with the move.
You're thinking of Red McCombs. He's a booster for Texas and said a few things to the media that may not have been preferable from the Texas point of view. But it seems like he and Charlie Strong may have worked things out. But this will be something to look into, because if Charlie Strong isn't able to start getting wins at Texas, is his head on the chopping block? You know, is there going to be a quick move to say, see, we didn't really want him. He's not producing. That could be something to look into. And I think when you were talking about with these other coaches they were looking at, you know, the Nick Sabans, a Les Miles, a Gus Malzahn, these are guys that had already been signed to long-term extensions. Mm-hmm. They are wrapped up into the schools that they are at. And I think there's a comfort factor with that. Makes it hard for them to move.
And I'm sorry to interrupt here. I mean, there's a comfort factor, and there's also an age factor to take into consideration. You have Nick Saban, a guy as prestigious as him, and to see what he's done with Alabama. He's, I believe, 64 or so. He's up there, and he's stated many times throughout the process where Texas was looking at coaches saying he's comfortable in Alabama. This is the last place. He doesn't want to go to another school and rebuild, because he deals with enough stress as it is, having to keep up with Alabama and the standards that they have.
Look at Urban Meyer. I mean, he had to leave Florida because of stress.
He did.
So this is something that we do need to look into. Age-wise, Charlie Strong is 53, has some youth compared to some of these other coaches, but I truly believe that Charlie Strong is trying to find that place to settle down. And what better place than Texas? Like you said, Mac Brown was there for 16 seasons. If Charlie Strong can, get to roughly 70 years old and finish his career at Texas, I think he's going to be a happy guy.
Another side note to this, if you think about it, there were, I think, 28 players on Louisville's team that were from Florida. He was able to grab the Florida recruits, even from up in Kentucky. Now you shift back down south into the heartland of football, Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. You know that. Football is huge. But he can really put a hand in there and really grab the recruits that I believe will help Texas improve in the very immediate future as well as down the road, which in Texas, I believe that there was a lot of tension and kind of tiredness of seeing this mediocre production, because they're used to these 11, 10-win seasons. In the last 5 seasons with Mac Brown, the overall record has not been well.
It was after Colt McCoy graduated that they started to kind of fall off. And you mentioned the recruiting. My last point on this is just simply look at the top 3 states, in terms of high school football. They tend to be Texas, Florida, and Ohio. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see where he's coached. He was Florida, so he knows that Florida area pretty well. Louisville, it's about 2 hours south of Ohio. Right. He can recruit out of the Cincinnati area, Moeller, St. X, Elder. These are great schools to recruit from. And now you go to Texas. And you have the Texas name. because you are coaching for the Texas Longhorns.
Longhorn
This
Network.
is exactly this is a great opportunity for him. He knows how to recruit. If you can get guys to go to Louisville, you can get them to go almost anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another big program. I mean, look at going into another one, Penn State. You know, their hiring of James Franklin, who did an amazing job at Vanderbilt. And it's unfortunate. It's moving on from the Joe Pa era still. You had Bill O'Brien. He's left. He left the vacancy. James Franklin came in. He did an amazing job at Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt, before James Franklin came, was an afterthought for a football team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a team that I believe I saw somewhere that in the 70 years before James Franklin took over, they had, I believe, 1 or 2 9-win seasons ever.
Right.
James Franklin coaches for 3 years and gets 2 of them.
Right.
The guy can recruit. We can safely say that. It helps to have the SEC name going on there, but when you're Vanderbilt and you're normally getting about 4 wins a year, don't even try and recruit against these teams like Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Arkansas, Tennessee, South Carolina. Now you get A&M and Missouri. The SEC is stacked, and he was still able to get 2 9-win seasons.
Right.
He's 2-1 in bowls. I believe his only loss was his first season there, where he was still working with the majority of those players not from his era.
Right.
Now he started putting in his own players, and you saw the results.
And look at it this way also. Yeah, you have the SEC title that he's been dealing with the past couple of years. He's been compared to Urban Meyer in terms of his recruitability, the ability to get people to his school, to sell his school. And you're sending him to Penn State, which we can both be honest and say they need someone like that because there's still some iffiness to attending Penn State, I believe, and everything that they're trying to clean up with their immediate past, the past couple of years with the Joe Pa scandal and Jerry Sandusky and all that. So,
well, I mean, you talk about scandal, and Franklin is in the middle of one himself potentially. He had 4 players on the roster this year, or that were kicked off the roster, I should say, because they're involved in a rape scandal of their own. It's not child molestation with Jerry Sandusky. It's not that it's good, but it's not it doesn't have that same vibe to it. But the fact is, he may be involved in this case. We don't know what he knew. We don't know what he didn't know. We don't know what exactly is going to happen. But you can almost guarantee he will be going on trial if this goes to court. And if that becomes an issue with this, if that becomes an issue for Penn State, we're going to be seeing a lot of different things go on with that. It's very intriguing to see how it's going to be handled because we know they want that squeaky clean personality like they got with Bill O'Brien.
Right. And I mean, and really, when it comes down to it, I believe that this hire is a good hire for both James Franklin and Penn State. From what I usually heard, it was between Al Golden from Miami, who also had time, I believe, at Temple as well, and James Franklin. And I believe, honestly, they picked the right one. Al Golden has had a great career so far, and he's done well. But I think James Franklin is better suited for it. I believe he's probably more ready to take what this job incorporates, what you need from it, to take a big job like this. And he's proven himself at Vanderbilt, having basically nothing really at his disposal and building it up to a respectable program now. And now when you have a big program like Penn State, you have more tools, you have more at your access, and I'm interested in seeing what he does in these next couple of years, however long he's there.
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I'm a little saddened by this. I'm a Vanderbilt fan. Would have loved to see him stay. But it's hard to argue with a guy doing something that's right for him. And I think this was the right move for him. This is a great opportunity. I hope he does well. But this is something. These two schools that we're talking about here, they are big question marks because they haven't performed to that historical level that we're used to. But I think I would not be surprised if both these guys bring them back to that level.
Definitely.
All right, let's go and jump right into the NFL. We're just going to break down each of these coaches that got hired. We'll start with Lovie Smith, Buccaneers. What do you think?
Honestly, first of all, it's a reunion actually for him. He actually was the linebacking coach at Tampa Bay from '96 to 2000. So it's a reunion for him. He was excited. Honestly, I was kind of shocked by the hire. I believe that they're defensive heavy. That's their strength, which some people think, oh, if they're defensive heavy, get them a defensive-minded coach, things will be good. That could work, and I believe this could work. But at the same point, they need help on offense. They need someone who can really work that offense. They have weapons. I think Mike Glennon can be a starter in the NFL. Obviously he has started, but a better one, a more respectable one. He doesn't have a plethora of receivers. That's a problem. He doesn't have a tight end. He has Doug Martin in the backfield, which is good. Brian Leonard, first season where he had a respectable carry workload after spending the majority of his career with the Cincinnati Bengals. So I was kind of shocked when I first heard the news about it. But when I started thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? Their defense is amazing. Their offense is what hurts them. That gets their defense tired because they have so many 3-and-outs, and it tires the defense. So I'm interested in seeing what they do coming into the draft, seeing what Lovie Smith will want to work on, whether it's offense or defense. If he can pull off, as some people have projected, Buccaneers drafting a linebacker such as Khalil Mack. Sorry about that. Khalil Mack. A linebacking core of Khalil Mack and Levante David would be scary to opposing offenses, I would think.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's tough to look at a team that is defensive heavy, like you're talking about, and bring in a defensive coach. But the fact is, Lovie Smith is a winner. He coached the Bears into the Super Bowl in 2006. They did lose to the Colts, but that was he knows how to win, especially with maybe less than ideal quarterbacks. Rex Grossman is a great example. He won based off of his defense, so he knows how to coach this team into wins based on a great special teams and a great defense. And if he can pull that off in Tampa Bay, I can't say I'd be surprised. There is stuff that they need to work on. I agree. You talked about the quarterback. You talked about the receivers. But this team is not necessarily out of reach from bringing on more wins back to this franchise, getting maybe another Super Bowl in the future. Who knows? Anything can happen. Now let's go ahead and jump to Jay Gruden going to the Redskins. He was from Cincinnati with his as an offensive coordinator. Some would say that the development of Andy Dalton is solely on his shoulders. What you take from that is your choice. But being from Cincinnati, I think I can safely say we're not happy about it. But I think at the same time, we're okay seeing Jay Gruden leave. I wish him the best of luck. He's got some experience as a head coach. Actually, he coached in the Arena Football League and
success with the Orlando Predators.
Exactly. And he he's a Super Bowl champion under his brother. Yeah. Exactly, under Jay Gruden in Tampa Bay. John Gruden in Tampa Bay. And it's going to be interesting because right now I think the biggest thing that he has to do is kind of reel in RG3, because right now RG3 is not looking good in the media. Right now RG3 seems to think that or is being portrayed at least to think that he thinks he runs everything. Him and Dan Snyder are best buddies, and he can kind of get whatever he wants. And if he wants to have success in the NFL, it can't be that way. It's got to be a team mindset, and hopefully for his sake, Jay Gruden can bring that to him. I don't know enough to say that Jay Gruden has that personality. If he's like his brother in that personality, we shouldn't have any issues with RG3 anymore.
I mean, there's a couple of things I'm interested with this signing and this choice, this decision to go with Jay Gruden as the head coach now. It's not an offensive coordinator job. It is the head coach. You're overseeing everything, and that kind of worries me to an extent. There have been decisions that he did on offense with the Bengals this season, which really made me. It's like you really chose to do that. So it makes me worry for the decisions that he'll make, and he'll grow in time. One thing to look out for in camp, and some people, when I say this, will think there's no way they're going to do that. You wouldn't have the guts to do it. Quarterback battle, because the quarterback that he was used to is Andy Dalton, and reports came out about a month ago or so that at draft time, Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, liked Colin Kaepernick. However, Jay Gruden really pushed on picking Andy Dalton. He wanted Andy Dalton. He said that would fit his scheme the best. So we picked Andy Dalton. Now Bengals fans are faced with having seen Kaepernick go to the Super Bowl, lose, and just lose last night to the Seahawks. Get playoff wins, which Andy Dalton has not been able to give us. So between RG3 and Kirk Cousins, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a battle. Have that competitive edge because he's not used to a mobile quarterback like RG3. RG3 is kind of reckless in a sense. He does seem a little bit scared now that his knees have been battered so many times, and people are unsure of how long he'll be in the league with the type of play. That's why people are worried about Johnny Manziel. But Kirk Cousins, he kind of reminds me of John Kitna in a sense. If he needs to run, he'll run. He'll get out of the pocket. He's not Michael Vick. He's not Colin Kaepernick. But he's a solid starter who will get you victories in time, and he will put up productive stats.
If you can develop Kirk Cousins, because we saw Andy Dalton at the beginning of it in that first year, Andy Dalton had a good first year.
Mm-hmm.
As a first-year quarterback, you're expecting very little from this guy, and he put up the numbers, got us to the playoffs. All right, that's fine. Now, I would have liked to see more development out of him, but that can be Kirk Cousins. That's the same thing. You give him the opportunity. He got the opportunity these last 3 weeks, but I don't think anyone on that team really had their mindset correct to try and pick up wins. If you want to be honest about it, it's something that can be changed with a new personality like Jay Gruden. But I would like to see Kirk Cousins maybe given an opportunity, or maybe just time to let him go, because this is a guy that was being talked about as being the third or fourth quarterback taken 2 years ago, ended up falling to the fourth round after people like Brock Osweiler. Don't ask me about that one. I'm still confused by it. But he got stuck behind RG3. He was never given an opportunity. If he can really get the chance to show how good he can be, he may have some suitors on the trade market at least, or you may see RG3 on the trade market just because of the fact that Gruden needs a system guy.
Right, and you say that with the RG3 maybe on the trade market, I can see where that may be thought for some people. Who knows? I've seen crazier things happen. Carson Palmer trade. Didn't really see that one coming. Didn't believe that Mike Brown would actually pull the trigger on it, but he did. However, I don't think the Redskins owner, Dan Snyder, I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would do a move like that. I don't think he would. He's ready to face the grunt of what Redskins fans would definitely have to say if they traded away RG3.
Well, we all know Dan Snyder isn't afraid to make big moves and watch them fail. So, who knows what that entails?
So we go from Bengals offensive coordinator leaving to a head coaching job, and wouldn't it just make sense if our defensive coordinator left for a job too?
Yay!
So we got Mike Zimmer going to Minnesota. Personally, my first thought, I'm actually happy for him. I'm really happy. It's sad to see him go. He built us an unbelievable defense, and it's sad to see him go. But at the same time, I think he's deserving of it. Finally, he has been in the coaching carousel the past 2 years, I believe. Decided to stick with the Bengals each time. So I think it was time, and I think everyone kind of saw the writing on the wall that, this will be the year. You can only wait so many years before you think to yourself, you know what, I really got to take this. And it's like dangling a worm in front of a fish, and eventually that fish is going to bite. So he's taking his shot. So
he's taking his talents to Minnesota. I don't want to make this about shots taken at Marvin Lewis, but honestly, this is the guy that I would rather see coaching the Bengals than Marvin Lewis. That's a discussion for another time. Mike Zimmer has done a heck of a job coaching this defense. He did lose his wife a couple years ago. Yeah. Very sad incident, and he was still able to coach this defense into being one of the best in the league. This year, they finished third in the league in total defense, best in the AFC. And this is not something that you normally saw in the AFC. All the top teams in the AFC were offensive powerhouses. And he built it, and he helped build the Bengals up through the defense. Mike Zimmer has done a heck of a job coaching players that, one, some other guys didn't want. Two, that some guys that other teams did want, but couldn't deal with their baggage.
Right.
And he's dealt with injuries. This season alone, you lose your top defensive player in Geno Atkins for, I believe it was about week 8 when he went down. About half the season without him, and he still had this defense putting up numbers. He had other guys step in. He's setting up this next man up mentality, something like a Bill Belichick would do. And Leon Hall, the top corner for the Bengals, was out for most of the year as well. So the fact is, Mike Zimmer can coach. The question is, can he coach an offense? Because as a head coach, you've got to be able to coach an offense. And right now, Minnesota is in a lot of flux right now. Their quarterback questions like crazy. Who knows what that means? Maybe that's when they decide, let's go draft a quarterback, this year. There's a lot of things that he can do, but I think there's no question in my mind that he can coach this team to play defense in a division where you got to play both Green Bay and Detroit, two of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, and you talk about Minnesota's offensive struggles. What's really mind-boggling to me, not only that, but worrisome to me, thoughts of really clean slate at quarterback. I wouldn't feel comfortable putting any of those quarterbacks in, even as a backup. Josh Freeman, I was happy that he got out of Tampa. He was struggling. There was public relation issues, whatever you want to call them, with Tampa. He needed to get out, and they shoved him out. Matt Castle, let's be honest. What made Matt Castle was his 1 year playing in New England. With the weapons that he had that year, Andy Dalton would be good.
And not to mention, Bill Belichick was the coach. And as much as I don't like the Patriots, Bill Belichick is one of the best coaches to ever coach in the NFL or college football or anything for that matter. Bill Belichick is a pure winner. And when you have to take your star quarterback, a Hall of Famer in Tom Brady, and watch him go down in week 1 and still put up 11 wins that season, he didn't make the playoffs, but still put up 11 wins that season with Matt Castle, who has shown that he is not set to be a starting quarterback in this league. Wow.
But I mean,
give him credit.
He went from New England then to Kansas City, where he showed his true colors. Really, he's nothing mere than an average quarterback, and that's nothing against him.
Well, he was a backup quarterback at USC. He didn't start a single game at USC and was still somehow drafted.
Right.
How that happens is astounding to me, but it just shows that Matt Castle was never really going to do much for them. And then you go to like Christian Ponder, their other quarterback. I think we all agree that was a reach. We agreed on draft day that was a reach because they saw in the first round Cam Newton go number 1. That was an obvious one. That was going to happen. But Jake Locker went number 7, and Blaine Gabbert went at number 10. And they were thinking, we may not get a quarterback in this draft.
They panicked.
Exactly. They hit the panic button.
Impulse.
Christian Ponder, bring him in. And everyone, the experts, the fans, all went, what? What are you doing?
It's like on Black Friday, and you see something, you think, and you're seeing all of them get picked up, and it's like, oh crap, I better get it before you're buying on impulse.
Exactly.
You should never do that in a draft, especially the first round, because that's where you're going to get the most criticism.
Exactly. So Mike Zimmer, he has some stuff to work on with this offense. I think he can put together a defense no matter what players you give him. And he does have some talent. Jared Allen, Chad Greenway.
Jared Allen's going to be a free agent this.
I think they would like to bring him back.
But actually, what I've seen interesting is the thought that Michael Johnson might follow Zimmer.
I certainly hope not.
The Vikings. But one last note for the Vikings, which is worrisome, and it goes back to their offense. Not only are you unstable at quarterback, but let's look in the time clock for Adrian Peterson.
They do have Toby Gerhardt as a backup who has shown that he can be solid, but I do agree that this is something to look at.
Because he's dealing with groin issues. He's seeing a specialist. I saw, and you know what? Father Time for running backs runs fast.
Oh,
and he's, with how much pounding he's taken, you got to start looking in the past these next couple of years and saying, hey, what's our insurance plan? Because Gerhardt's good. He's solid. But I still believe he's a number 2. I see him as a Brian Leonard. He's a number 2. He can have good production if in a running back by committee. So,
well, I mean, I'm sure they will be looking around This is, like you said, a lot of questions for Mike Zimmer. I'm very happy for his opportunity. I wish him the best of luck. Now let's go ahead and jump to the Lions, division opponent of the Vikings. They too are getting a new head coach. They were done with Jim Schwartz and his, I don't even know what to call it sometimes, just lack of discipline on that team. And they're moving in with a new era under Jim Caldwell. Now, Jim Caldwell, we know him best as the former head coach of the Indianapolis Colts after Tony Dungy decided to retire. He spent this last year working with the Baltimore Ravens as their offensive coordinator. And even before he was in Indianapolis, he did have some head coaching experience at the college level at Wake Forest. Did not see success there, but he does have head coaching experience, something I think the Lions definitely needed. Now, they have an offense. We know what they have at offense. They have the best wide receiver in the game and who is going to go down as one of the best 2 to 3 wide receivers of all time. That is not a question mark.
There's a lot of questions that remain, though. Because if you only have one receiver, they're going to double team them, and you got to find other weapons, and that's their problem. They don't have a running back. They don't have.
I would disagree with that from a couple perspectives, just because it's Calvin Johnson. He's 6'5", 6'6". He jumps better than most people in the NFL. You can throw it up there, and somehow he comes down with it. Don't ask me how, because I'm so confused by it. It's an incredible talent. Their running back, I think, is less of a question mark than people want to think. The fact is, Reggie Bush fits the exact type of offense that the Lions want to run, where they go, Matt Stafford drops back, screen pass to Reggie Bush, let him make plays, because that's what he does best. You want him in the open field. You don't want him taking big hits from linebackers and defensive linemen. You get him outside, and he can take on cornerbacks and safeties. That is not the issue. And then even Joique Bell, he's that power in their game. They get a little, ground and pound kind of thing going, and Joique Bell fits their offense as well because he too can catch the ball. Now, I agree with the second receiver. They do need to keep working on that. Nate Burleson going down this year was not helpful for them. They need more consistency at tight end because Brandon Pettigrew, just frustrating.
Nate Burleson, if I remember this correctly, hurt himself because he was reaching for a pizza in his car.
Things happen. Let's be honest.
Which I can't. When I first saw that story, I just laughed. I'm like, really? Like that sounds like something I would hear my Bengals do.
Well, you can go in freak injuries. Brandon Inge got his kid was jumping on the bed, and when he went to go pick up his kid, tore a muscle in his leg for the Tigers. I mean, freak accidents happen. That's not something to worry about. But I think what it comes down to is, can the Lions play defense? And they should, because this is one of the, based on pure talent, one of the best defenses in the NFL. And they can't get it together. You have Ndamukong Suh. You have Nick Fairley. You have Ziggy Ansah, who I think, give him some time, can be a very, very good player. DeAndre Levy, he at one point during the season as a linebacker was leading the league in interceptions. Stephen Tulloch, another fantastic player. If they can shore up the secondary, because I don't think there's any way you can argue that secondary is good. Front seven though, one of the best in the NFL, just cannot stay focused.
I mean, their defense is solid, which is why, out of all the NFL head coaching so far, I think this is the one that makes the most sense because you're bringing an offensive-minded person, which is where they are struggling. They have Matthew Stafford, they have Reggie Bush, they have Joique Bell, and they have Calvin Johnson. However, going back, this might hurt you not remembering this, losing to the Baltimore Ravens. That game was horrible to watch. You lose to Justin Tucker. It was the Detroit Lions against Justin Tucker.
You lost to a kicker. Come on, Lions. Come on, Lions.
But he's a great kicker. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's an amazing kicker, young kicker who is making these unbelievable shots. However, there's something to worry about. If your offense can't get it together, you shouldn't. It goes back to you need that second receiver. They're having the same problem as the Bengals are having in the sense of A.J. Green and Andy Dalton is Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. They are that's their first instinct. And I understand they're the number one receiver. However, if you are so zoned in on that receiver, they'll read you like a book. And they'll have so many interceptions. Look at Matthew Stafford. Ton of interceptions this year, as did Andy Dalton. And they're untimely interceptions. There's no good time for interceptions, but man,
they come at the worst of times. I'm telling you. And here's the other problem with Matt Stafford. most of the time, you look at a quarterback, they have one angle that they throw the ball from. Most of the time, it's over the top. Matt Stafford likes to throw over the top, from the side, somewhere in between. That's why his throws become erratic, because he tries and fit it through these small windows with some weird arm angle that's not going to work. He needs to have a level of consistency and be willing to just say, hey, this play isn't going to work. Throw the ball away. It's okay. It's okay to take an incomplete pass, because the interception is going to hurt you a lot more.
Right. That, or like I've screamed at my TV about the Bengals to do so many times. You have a scat back like Giovanni Bernard in Reggie Bush. Dump pass. I don't know how hard it is. They overlook him so much. I'm pulling my hair out, and I'm surprised I'm not bald yet. So
I'm 100% with you. This is something that I think the Lions do better than the Bengals, because if you look at total receptions, these are guys that do get a lot of receptions. But yes, work to do for sure. Let's jump to the Texans. We talked about the Penn State opening coming from Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien is now the Texans head coach. Now, I don't know how the Texans were this bad this year, considering that they were a division winner the year before. Actually, a two-time division winner, I should say. Both times, I have to say, beat the Bengals in the playoffs. I hate that. I'm sorry, I just needed to be said. But Bill O'Brien he's got head coaching experience. Coach under Bill Belichick. And if you look at Bill Belichick's like the pedigree that he's sent out into the NFL and to the college ranks, these guys have done pretty well. They know how to coach. Bill O'Brien, I expect the exact same thing, because if he can fill out that quarterback issue with Matt Schaub, Case Keenum, whoever the heck they throw there, if he can fix that, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency, through a trade, whatever they do with it to bring in a quarterback to help this team, then this team will succeed. And I guess the other big thing to mention is, I believe Tate is their backup running back is going to be a free agent.
Browns really like him.
Browns do really like him. And Arian Foster is not healthy. If they lose that, this offense will definitely take a hit. But I think Arian Foster is going to come back okay. Maybe that's just me being a little naive and a little positive, having that positive attitude. But I think this team's going to be fine under Bill O'Brien. We'll see them get back into the winning ways, because frankly, this division's kind of a joke right now. Look at Titans and the Jaguars; they're awful, and the Colts are so inconsistent. Andrew Luck's a good quarterback, but they're very big, a lot of inconsistencies. So I think Bill O'Brien can bring this team back to another division.
Yeah, you touched on something earlier with Arian Foster and health, and really, that's the one thing I'm really interested in seeing Bill O'Brien coach this team. I hope the Texans don't pull a page out of the same book that the Browns did and fire their coach less than a year into his career. That was just a shame. But you look at the team, and they have a lot of holes. Running back, uncertain. As you mentioned, health of Arian Foster. I wouldn't doubt Ben Tate leaving because I know he can win a starting job somewhere else. Be the star there. Quarterback, a mess. Did poor job. That's why Kubiak probably left. He seemed like he was
stuck on Matt Schaub. He was stuck on Matt Schaub.
Strong on Matt Schaub when it seemed like maybe upper management kind of wanted to see what Case Keenum had to do. Wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not going to put too much blame on him. He had good production, but I don't think
he was given enough opportunities.
The inconsistencies between quarterbacks really hurts. Then you look to your defense for a sec, because what people look at the Texans this past year, they're like, their defense is horrible. But you look back to this. The defenses that we're used to for the Texans is when they had both J.J. Watt and Connor Barwin. They had a double team, and Connor Barwin left, if people don't remember.
He's now with the Philadelphia Eagles, exactly.
So you don't have that 1-2 combination.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Brian Cushing had some injuries to deal with again this year, which that's their best linebacker. This is a tackling machine for them, and if you don't have him out on the field, you're going to be hurt. And this is their secondary. Jonathan Joseph, he's back and forth. Like they need to have a level of consistency, and I believe, having seen Bill O'Brien coach, this dude is fiery. This is a guy who's not afraid to get in your face,
No.
and I just there's no doubt in my mind that he will be able to get these guys to start playing again in the level that they're able to. The one bright spot that they had this past season was Andre Johnson getting back to the Andre Johnson that we all remember him to be. He had a great season, and the year before with Kubiak, the entire season, things didn't quite go so well for him. So I think that is one thing to be happy about is that they have their number one receiver.
And you had
Probably in better spirits than he was the year before, and he's shown that he can, even though he is getting a little bit older, he's still got it.
And you have some other defensive players having to step up. Keyshawn Johnson, I believe it was, or the corner, Johnson. I'll look that up later, but you have some young corners stepping up to help out Jonathan Joseph. But when it comes down to it, there are many holes to fill. There's many things to look at to really say, hey, what is this team capable of? At this point right now where they stand, I'm going to project this quickly. Assume they lose Ben Tate, I can see them winning 7 games. I still think that there's problems that need to be fixed, chemistry issues that will be hopefully worked out through the preseason and training camp with whatever quarterback they choose. So, it's going to be interesting to see where the Texans go next year because they got some important decisions to make. And,
Are you thinking of Kareem Jackson?
Yes, Kareem Jackson. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. But yeah, this will be another team that I think will turn around in a good way. Pick up more wins than they did this year. But let's not jump too high on them right now where we're expecting them to be a playoff team quite yet. The AFC is still very strong, and while I said the Colts very inconsistent, they're still the class of the division. Andrew Luck can get them into the playoffs, and they have to go. They have to go with that.
For the Texans, it just comes down to this point statement. There's not much. If you go down, the only thing is up. You got to go up.
Exactly.
And
you got the number 1 overall pick.
2-14. You're almost. You had a worse record than Jacksonville.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Let's go and stay in the AFC South here. Let's go to the Titans. They hired Ken Wisenhunt. Ken Wisenhunt was a former head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. Coached them from 2007 to 2012. He actually took them to the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Unfortunately, they lost that game. Dang it, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Great game, though.
A great game, absolutely. He spent this past season as an offensive coordinator for the Chargers. And if we remember the Chargers before this season, for a few years, they were a side note in that division. They were not anything worth mentioning. And Ken Wisenhunt, I'm not going to say it was necessarily just him, but he was part of helping this offense come back and play like we expected to. Phillip Rivers was at one point considered a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and he hasn't played like it up until again this season. They drafted Keenan Allen, which worked great for them.
3rd or 4th round.
Exactly, and they picked up Danny Woodhead. These guys helped. They fit. I think they fit Ken Wisenhunt's offense.
Not just
so now you got to move him over to the Titans. Chris Johnson, you have that speed. You have hopefully for their sake, Kenny Britt is wanting to be there, help them out. Who knows about that? They do have Washington. Remind me of his first name.
I was about to say Kelly Washington, but
yeah, we're still thinking Bengals. We're still thinking the Bengals.
I didn't see any squirrel dances in the end zone. So
well, they got Washington on the other side of the field.
Nate
Washington. Thank you. They have Nate Washington on the other side of the field. This is a team that does have a lot of holes. Ken Wisenhunt, I don't know if he's happy with Jake Locker. I don't know if he's happy with Jake Locker as that quarterback. This is something that they will have to fix if they're not happy with him as their starter.
I think they're in kind of the same situation where the Bengals are with Dalton. He's got rain coming up. The years keep passing by, and there's no outstanding improvement. And the thoughts start to creep in. Is this our quarterback for the future? He's had good production, but the wins aren't coming, and the production has been average, and he's battled some significant injuries. So, I mean, you just got to wonder. Honestly, I was shocked that they fired their coach from the beginning. I thought they did decent. I didn't think he deserved the axe. They were prepared to offer an extension, I believe, but they eventually went the other way and canned him. So I was shocked. There were reports that when they met with them, that they had an extension on the side just in case, but that obviously wasn't the case. And
Well, I mean, it could have been just the fact that Mike Munchak did not want to be there anymore. He was kind of done with it. And while I'm not going to say that Mike Munchak is a bad coach, because that's unfair to say to him, I think they did get an improvement, bringing Ken Wisenhunt, um, and well, I don't expect them to be a good team for a while. They have just far too many holes to fill in. I wish Ken wasn't the best of luck. I wish he had gone to the Lions because honestly, I saw him basically the Lions kind of being that same kind of team that his Arizona Cardinals that went to the Super Bowl were. Great wide receiver, quarterback that just wants to throw the ball around. Running game isn't fantastic, but they can run the ball if they need to. All he needed to do was just, like we were saying with Jim Caldwell, you got to make sure that they have their mindset in the right place. I was hoping that he would go to the Lions because that's just the type of team that I saw, very similar to the Arizona Cardinals.
Going back to the Chargers for a quick second, you mentioned Keenan Allen and Philip Rivers. One unsung hero of the season, Ryan Matthews. He stayed healthy, put up over 1,000 yards on the season. Great compliment to Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead is actually the compliment to Ryan Matthews, actually. But,
technically,
he stayed healthy. He cut down on his fumbling problem because that was huge the past couple of seasons, both the injuries and the fumbling. And that helped them move the ball. That helped them eat time, which helped them win some of these games, like the Kansas City game. Burns the clock down. They're able to set up for a game-winning field goal.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of those games where they ran the ball to eat the clock up, which put them in a position where all they had to do was kick the field goal. The other team would lose.
What made it impressive with the Chargers was the fact that you think of Philip Rivers as a superstar for this team. He's the guy that you want to go out there and be making all the plays. But there were games where he stepped back and let himself become a game manager. But when it counted, they needed that big drive from him. He was right there. He stepped up and was just he had a level of consistency, and I think some of that is the fact that they did bring in Ken Wisenhunt. So, you look at the Titans, they're going to need that consistency if they want to succeed. Now let's go ahead and jump into the last vacancy of the NFL, still yet to be filled. It's the Cleveland Browns. What a mess. I don't know what else to say. They get rid of a guy that they hired 11 months earlier, gave him no opportunity to win because 2 or 3 games in the season, whenever it was, you traded away your best offensive player in Trent Richardson. The deal ended up working out in their favor because Trent Richardson didn't do a single thing worth mentioning in Indianapolis. But the fact of the matter is, he was a great player when he was with the Browns, and you just immediately trade him away. I feel so bad for Rod Shadinsky because this was a mess, and that's why I'm not surprised this vacancy still exists because no coach wants this. If you see that you're going to be fired after a year, why would you want to go there?
Coaching stability,
exactly.
You want to, especially for coaches that may have a younger family, that may have kids coming along that aren't graduated or aren't off in college or whatever. They want to know that they can make friends in those areas. It's a family side as well. You got to do what you got to do when it comes down to your job. But at the same time, if your family is moving with you, you want to know that you have some stability. It's just it's similar to army families that have a parent in the armed forces or whatever that are constantly moving from base to base. You don't have that stability, and I think that's hurtful. And they proved it. They fired a coach 11 months into his contract, and I'm not surprised. You wonder why they're so vacant. Right now, they're looking at Dan Quinn, the offensive coordinator of Seattle. They want to have a second interview. They've already interviewed him. It's hard for me to see him leave Seattle with what he has there as an offensive coordinator.
But at the same time, he is just an offensive coordinator.
Yes.
You want the opportunity to be a head coach and show what you can do. So it's hard. It may be hard for him to turn down that opportunity. They've talked to other guys. Josh McDaniels, he pulled his name out. he was being looked at as
And he's a local
a-
guy.
Exactly. He was being looked at as a legitimate coach for this team. He has had coaching experience, and he went no because he doesn't want to get in that mess. And it is a sticky situation there. You know, another guy that maybe they want to look at, Mike Munchak, another head coaching experience. I don't know if that really works for them, but I don't think there's nobody that really wants to go to Cleveland. It's Cleveland.
There's a difference between, you know, there's the NFL teams and there's Cleveland. And Cleveland has had some respectable seasons in the past 10 years.
Like one.
But, yeah, you can look at their roster, and you can point out, especially on their offense, that they have some valuable weapons. You have Josh Gordon. Jordan Cameron, depending on who you talk to, might be one of those valuable. You don't have a running back. Your quarterback, Hoyer was a valuable piece.
For a time
He was
before
good.
tearing his ACL.
However, we got to be realistic. He's not the guy. You need to find another wide receiver, and you know you have the best offensive line. If you have one of the best offensive linemen in Joe Thomas. You have Alex Mack, who's a solid center.
Oh yeah.
And if you can't produce offensively, to be respectable, I can't.
And their defense is
I don't know
good.
what to say.
The defense is good. They have the right players at defense. Now, what they really need to do is assess their problems in the draft, and we will jump into that in a
They
little
need to
bit.
be consistent.
They need
as a team.
consistency, which can be taken care of with the draft. And like I said, we're going to jump into that
Right.
a little bit later. For now, let's talk a little Super Bowl. We had our conference championships last night. We had the
Exciting
Patriots take on the Broncos, and then in the first game, and then the second game, 49ers at the Seahawks. Now, there's a little bit of history going on here where in the past, I believe it's about 15 seasons, only 2 number 1 seeds have won a Super Bowl, okay? So looking at these games, you're thinking at least one of these teams is going to lose. Who that is, that's up to a lot of, people's opinions. But we actually got in both number 1 seeds, Broncos defeating the Patriots and the Seahawks defeating the 49ers. And this is only the second time, I believe, ever that we've had 2 number 1 seeds playing each other in the Super Bowl. The last one came in 2009 or 10. It was the Saints and the Colts. And we all remember that was a great Super Bowl. So I think we have a lot to look forward to here. We have one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Seattle Seahawks. And we have probably the best offense in the NFL in the Denver Broncos. This is strength versus strength. And this is going to be one of the best. I think that one of the best Super Bowls we'll be seeing for a long time.
One quick thing to note: looking back at you saw a tale of 2 different games last night. Despite what the scoreboard says for the Denver game, only winning by 10 points on the field, they dominated them.
Absolutely.
Aqib Talib, once he left, they had no one, and Peyton Manning just threw ducks, and everyone was catching him. It was a touchdown palooza.
Before we go too far, I just want to say Bill Belichick is complaining about the Aqib Talib hit from Wes
He
Welker.
can go complain about that and be a sore loser, but you know what? You got to own up.
This is football, baby.
Yeah,
we got to play tough.
And Seattle game, I just wouldn't have minded seeing 49ers win, but when it comes down to it, that was a well-played game. Last time they came into Seattle, they were embarrassed. They didn't know how to take it, but this game they came in with special technology helmets to help cancel out the sound or dull it down.
I don't think that's you can ever cancel out that sound. Seattle is by far the best home field advantage in sports, and I'm not talking just NFL, not just talking football. In sports, like it is crazy there. It is. That is one of those places that you just want to go for at least one game, but you lose that advantage now in the Super Bowl because this is going to be played in New York City.
It's supposed to be a snowy week too.
Which there's a lot of different factors here. So like I said, we don't have the Seahawks with their home field advantage. That hurts them. They don't play as well on the road. Most teams don't, but they're one of the big. There's a big difference between how they play on home and on the road. Talk about the snow, weather. That is a huge issue for the Denver Broncos because they want to pass the ball. Mm-hmm. The snow will make this game more defensive and running backs. That is who's going to tell the tale of the game if snow becomes a factor.
Mhm.
Well, who does that leave the advantage to? The Seattle Seahawks. The December offense is predicated on their passing game with their incredibly talented wide receivers and who other than Peyton Manning, the best quarterback possibly in NFL history. And what he really wants to do is get that second Super Bowl. One, he's got to tie his brother because Eli Manning somehow has 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the fact that a lot of people are holding against Peyton Manning the fact that he only has 1 Super Bowl because he's not one of the best in NFL history if he doesn't have rings. But I think the one thing to look at is, how do rings really tell the story? Because you've got a lot of guys who have done nothing in their career with many, rings. Like I go to the NBA, you look at Robert Horry, 7 rings. Was he ever a superstar? Absolutely not. There's another guy who played for the Boston Celtics. I looked this up the other day. His name is Satch Sanders. Have you even heard of this guy?
No.
Played for the Boston Celtics in the 60s. Mm-hmm. He has 8 NBA championships.
Okay.
His averages in his career, 9.6 points, roundabout, and about 6 rebounds a game. If that doesn't scream role player, I don't know what does. But he has 8 rings. Does that make him a Hall of Famer? No. He didn't do anything.
Right.
Peyton Manning has shown that he is a fantastic player. And if you even look at the losses that he's had in the playoffs, because if he loses this game, I believe that would set the record for most losses in the playoffs in an NFL career. So,
but at the same time,
it's a team game. You still have to do it with a team. And the fact of the matter is, when he does lose, he plays well. Right. He plays well.
That's the scary thing. It's not just well. It's what his bad is some people's good.
Andy Dalton.
And that's impressive. And you mentioned if he loses this game, it might tie or break the most postseason losses. But you got to keep this into consideration.
That means he's been to the playoffs a lot.
He's been to the playoffs a lot. He's respectable. Going back to the matchups, though, we talk about weather issues and how it might turn it into a running game. Don't count out Knowshon Moreno. He is a solid back. He's no Marshawn Lynch. He's no beast mode.
Skittles!
He might be... He's like a little mini-me, basically, compared to beast mode over there in Seattle. But you look at the passing game. Say it's not cold enough where passing is out the window. Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson. You look at the weapons that Peyton Manning has, and you look at the weapons that Russell Wilson has. It's a close matchup. But in the end, my personal opinion is I feel that Peyton has the advantage.
Anytime you put Peyton Manning on a team, I would give that team an advantage in a playoff situation.
But you have Demaryius Thomas. You have Julius Thomas as well. You have Wes Welker. You have
Eric Decker.
You have Eric Decker.
Jacob Tamme, who, while he isn't a star by any means, he has great chemistry with Peyton Manning.
Worked with him in Indianapolis.
Exactly.
You have Knowshon Moreno, who is a scat back. He's kind of like not a hybrid, but he's kind of like a Reggie Bush. He can run. That's his main cup of tea, I guess. But he can catch passes out of the backfield. Where Marshawn Lynch can, but that's not his thing. He is a ground and pound, meet you at the line, I will run you over type of back.
Mm-hmm.
He's not taking anyone's business. I would probably just lay down if he was charging towards me and be like, go on ahead. I don't need to be carried off in the stretchers. So that's just me. You can have your Skittles and I'll take my M&Ms.
Well, Chad, I'm not really sure how to follow that up, but no, I'm 100% in agreement with that. Marshawn Lynch is definitely the better back in this game, but it's hard to go against Peyton Manning. I think everyone looked at last year's Super Bowl, 49ers-Ravens, and there was no question that the 49ers were the better team. But it's almost like the team of destiny thing. Ray Lewis is going out. He's retiring after this season.
I'm happy that Ray Lewis ended out on a ring, which is
why I agree. But I think, but who's to say this isn't going to be Peyton Manning's, team of destiny right here? If Peyton Manning wins a Super Bowl, it would not surprise me. I wouldn't be necessarily happy that I'd like to see him stick around. But it wouldn't surprise me if he goes, I'm going to go and retire. He got what he wanted out of Denver. He went to Denver to win a Super Bowl because he was going to a guy who knew exactly what it's like to go your entire career and just get, made fun of because you can't win a Super Bowl. And John Elway won his last two Super Bowls, his last 2 seasons in the NFL. And it would not surprise me if Peyton Manning wants to basically go out that same way. And if they win this year, who's to say that he won't just retire?
And you talk about team of destiny. Think of Peyton's season this year. He is one game away from being in the Super Bowl again. And who does he have to face again? Tom Brady.
His favorite team to play.
Different team at being with the Broncos now, but it's still the Tom Brady Peyton Manning matchup
that we all know and love.
I mean, if that's not destiny, like I don't know what is. Now he's facing Russell Wilson. It's like they've been saying, new age versus old age.
Mm-hmm.
It's this the new age of quarterbacks where you have to have enough speed to get you by, but you still need passing is first for a quarterback.
Exactly.
So you have the transition of the new age versus the old age. You're going to put them in the ring, duke it out. I think it's going to be a great game no matter what, because even every aspect of the ball, they're evenly matched. You have Hauschka and Prater. You have Manning and Wilson, and the wide receivers are evenly matched. I would only give the wide receiver advantage to Denver only because Percy Harvin being hurt, that does take one weapon away. Granted, he didn't play much at all this season due to health issues, but at the same time, Peyton has had all of his wide receivers for the majority. He has so many receivers that if he misses one receiver,
he had to play the last 2 or 3 weeks without Wes Welker and put up big numbers. He still had
4 receivers left.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Peyton Manning would be okay if someone were to go down. And, you look at the season he's had. He set records across the board. Just what a year. This would be exactly the type of thing of destiny with him retiring if he wins the Super Bowl. He sets the record for all-time yards or for passing yards in a season. He sets the record for most touchdowns in a season. One that he used to own that got passed up by Tom Brady.
Right.
Let's not forget that.
But here's the thing. I just hope that when he retires, and he doesn't pull Brett Favre after Brady breaks his record again next season and says, "Hey, wait, no, I want that. So let me take that back from you."
Oh well, hopefully we don't see that. Kind of last thing that we'll do here, Chad.
I want to quickly put you on the spot. Prediction for the Super Bowl.
That was what I was going to do, Chad. You're killing me. Prediction for the Super Bowl.
And score.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Peyton Manning. Got to take the Denver Broncos. Maybe I'm a little biased because I want them to win, but like I said, I think it's just it fits the mold. It's that team of destiny feel. I don't think it's going to be a blowout game. I think it's going to be very close to the wire, and Peyton Manning's going to be Peyton Manning at the end of the game, pick up the win for them. I'm thinking something like 31-28. What about you?
It's hard. I do agree. I do feel there's just that aura in there with Peyton Manning and the Broncos. And at the end of the day, I think they're going to win it. In terms of blowout, I don't think it's going to be a 3-point game. I think it could be 2-touchdown game or less, 10, 14-point game. I think they do have an advantage. Like we mentioned, Seattle, whole different team when they're away and on the road because they don't have the 12th man. You look at teams that rely on the 12th man, like Texas A&M. They call it the 12th man as well.
Exactly.
They're a whole different team on the road because they rely so much on it. So when you take Seattle out of that environment, out of what they're used to, they're the epitome of home field advantage. I mean, New Orleans has nothing on them. They play in a dome, but they have nothing on them. I would say Denver 31-17.
31-17. Okay. So we're both in agreement. Denver Broncos taking home the Super Bowl, getting their third in franchise history, first under Peyton Manning. I think we can both agree it's going to be a fun game. I think that's the one thing to fall back on.
Hold on. So, are you ready for some football?
Monday Night Party.
Super Bowl party.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go ahead and we're going to change up sports here, all right? Let's get into some basketball. We're just going to kind of cover some games that we're looking forward to seeing in the NBA, and then we're going to jump quickly over to some college basketball. With the NBA, tonight, Portland at Houston. This will be a fun one to watch. Portland's an up-and-coming team. Houston, they got Dwight Howard, James Harden.
They're a surprise team.
Portland, absolutely. This will be a fun one to watch. We also have Indiana at Golden State directly after that on TV. Another game that I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Indiana has shown that they right now might be the class of the NBA, at least for the regular season. I mean, we're not going to get into Miami too much, but I mean they have the best record right now, I believe. And then Golden State, hard to really count out a team with Steph Curry. Because I mean the guy just makes shots. I don't really know how else to put it. And then Wednesday we've got OKC at San Antonio. This is a Western Conference Finals matchup last year. A little bit different teams. I mean, just from the perspective that Kevin Martin no longer plays for OKC, DeJuan Blair's out of San Antonio. But I think you're still going to see an absolutely fantastic game.
You have the ageless Tony Parker still, and
Tim Duncan, yeah, and
they are both. They're playing like they're 23 years old still putting up double doubles and owning every point guard in the nation. So.
Well, I mean, Greg Popovich knows how to run that team, so
yeah.
It's hard to argue. So just we'll be looking out for those games. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. We're going to jump into some college basketball really quick.
But Wednesday, you do have another good game. OKC at San.
We did say OKC at San Antonio.
Never mind.
We're going to jump into some college basketball. New AP rankings came out today. The top 5 with the new poll, we're looking at Arizona staying at number 1. They have 61 of the 65 first-place votes. Not a whole lot of question marks on that one. Number 2, still Syracuse. They didn't move at all. They have 4 of the 65 votes, also undefeated. So, I mean, again, those 2 ones, no surprises there. Wisconsin was 3 last week. They dropped both their games this past week to Indiana and Michigan. And Michigan, they actually played at home, so that one definitely hurt them. Michigan State will jump up to number 3 after winning against Northwestern and Illinois this past week. Number 4, Villanova, they jumped over Wichita State, who stayed at number 5. A little bit of a surprise considering the fact that Wichita State is undefeated. They're the last of the 3 undefeated teams that we needed to mention. But, you know, it's hard to go against Villanova. Team is coached very well.
Their only loss is to Syracuse too.
Exactly,
and that's a respectable loss in and of itself.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's you really can't go wrong with these 2 options between 4 and 5. But I don't think there's going to be many people who are going to argue where those are. The big drops and rises in the rankings. We'll start with the drops. Baylor dropped 12 spots this week. They went from 12 to 24th with losses. Absolutely. I mean, they lost to Texas Tech and then home versus Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma's a solid team. I don't want to take that away from them. But
that game was.
But it was home versus. But you have a home game in your own building. You got to win those games. And that's as simple as that.
And keep this in mind though. In that Oklahoma game, Oklahoma started out shooting 1 for 12, and they ended up losing that game.
Yeah, Baylor has some work to do. They do have 2 very tough games this week. They play Kansas and Texas. If they win those games, we may be singing a different song next week, you know. So Baylor's got to show that they has a chance to show what they can do. The other big drop is 8 spots for Iowa State. They went from 8 to 16 after losses to Kansas and Texas. However, I must say both those losses are not bad. Both teams,
especially Texas, rising.
Texas is on the rise. Texas is right outside the top 25 right now. So don't count them out to see them, later in the year making a run. And Kansas is Kansas. Bill Self always coaches that team.
And about
really
Texas, a really quick side note. Last year, I believe, the whole season they had a total of 15 or 16 wins. The whole season.
Mm-hmm.
They enter this next game with 14 already.
Yeah,
They're a new team. They have a great point guard, shooting guard combo. I mean, you better watch out for them. They could be making a push for to make some movement in the NCAA tournament if they don't have a late season collapse. So,
Texas is a fun team to watch. Definitely would not be surprised to see them make a move in the tournament. Then when you look at the rises, the top 2 jumps that we saw. Kansas went from 15 to 8. They jumped up 7 spots after wins against Iowa State and Oklahoma State, 2 ranked teams. Good wins for them. So Kansas, I don't know if they're back. They do have 4 losses this season. I believe the only reason they're still in the top 10 is because of the fact that they were ranked so high to start the year. But they do have a lot of talent on that team, so Kansas they'll be sticking around. And then Louisville was the other one. They jumped from 18 to 12, 6 spots jump. They're now out. They beat Houston. I should say they demolished Houston, 91 to 52 last week, and then won at Connecticut. Never an easy game to play when you have to go to the Huskies home gym. So Louisville, I don't know.
They're a team to watch.
They're a team to watch. Exactly.
They lost Shane Bohannon. Kevin Ware's redshirted. So that's two people that were key contributors. So now these other people, it's going back to the next man up mentality. They're asked to step up. I'm interested in seeing what happens when they. Let's be honest. The American Conference for basketball, nothing to write about really. You have UC, you have Louisville, who will be leaving eventually, I believe.
At the end of the season.
And you have UConn, and outside that, I mean, Larry Brown has put
SMU's on the way up.
Southern Methodist is a solid team, but outside that,
it's weak.
You
weak.
build. You have to have a good enough out-of-conference schedule, which I worry about UC. I just hope they can keep 17-2. They're 15 in the newest polls, up from 19. But they just had a weak out-of-conference schedule, and I spoke to friends. I spoke to my dad. I told him, if they don't get 26 wins on the season, I would be worried, because this is a conference where I think they should dominate. And
I mean, it's all about matchups, though. You get a bad start to the tournament. Maybe they're the 4 seed in the American tournament this year, and second round they have to play Louisville, and it's like, oh well. I mean, it is about matchups, but I agree. But Louisville, last year we were writing them off midway through the season, and they ended up winning it all. So never write off a team like Louisville. Rick Pitino's a heck of a coach. So
it comes down to, just like any other sport, whether it's the Baltimore Ravens, Ray Lewis, and stuff like that, it's about what team gets hot and when.
Hitting your stride at the right time. Absolutely.
That's what Louisville did. That's what the Ravens did. That's what you need to nail down.
Absolutely. Now, we got some big games coming up this week. We're going to just touch on matchups between 2 ranked teams. Believe me, there's plenty of others. So let's go ahead and do it tonight. Got Baylor at Kansas. That'll be a fun one to watch. Again, like I said, Baylor's got a chance to show something they can do. Wednesday, Iowa at Michigan. Michigan just jumped into the rankings, and Iowa sits at number 10 right now. That's an up-and-coming team. Someone that, a team that we weren't looking at too much last year. Then Saturday, 3 games, going to be an absolute madhouse for these ones. Michigan at Michigan State, rivalry. Gotta love it. Kansas State at Iowa State. We got a Big 12 matchup there. And another Big 12 matchup, Texas at Baylor. We talked about, again, Baylor has a chance to prove themselves, and Texas is that up-and-coming team. Chad, what matchup are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to tonight's matchup, Baylor at Kansas. And it could, I don't know what to think of Baylor. They have free fallen from the team that they were entering the Iowa State game just, last week or so. That was to be the big game. But Kansas really hitting their stride, and through chemistry. You have Wiggins, who's admitted that college basketball is harder than what he expected. He's not outstanding, but he is lucky enough to have the rising presence of Joel Embiid, the 7-foot center out of Cameroon. He is putting up 11 points per game, averaging 7.6 rebounds, 1.4 assists, which he's a center, doesn't matter as much. But he has 2.9 blocks per game in 22.5 minutes. He is a potential number 1 overall draft pick in April's NBA draft. And he is starting to make his presence felt, and that has helped Kansas ride this winning streak they're on lately, which is 4 games right now. I'm really excited to see what he does, and just see what he can do for the Kansas Jayhawks. Now for Baylor, they're on a 2-game losing streak, and it's just inconsistent play. Going back to what I said about Oklahoma, the Oklahoma game, Oklahoma started out shooting 1 of 12. Very, very horrible shooting. It was just an ugly game all around, and Baylor gave it up. They seemed dominant the first couple minutes, but you can't if you want to win, you can't play that way. You got and in the Big 12, which has been known for its basketball, you know, you got to keep it up. This isn't. This is kind of like the Big East used to be, the conference full of talented teams. So you got to hold your own, and that's not what's going on for Baylor right now. They're letting up their guard. They're showing that they're vulnerable, and because of it, they've lost two straight. They have fallen 13 or so spots, now down to 24, almost out of the top 25. It's uncalled.
And I mean, if they lose both these games this week, they're going to be out. I mean, there's no discounting that. So I agree. This is a huge test for Baylor. And Kansas has been inconsistent, so Baylor has a chance to grab a win. So Baylor, it sounds like Chad's calling you out, to be honest. Show what you got, because we know you're a better team than what you're showing.
They're like Oregon. Oregon started out strong, but since conference play has started, they've done horrible. I believe that they have the same conference record of 1-3. That Oregon's fallen out, and Baylor is 1-3 in the Big 12. It's what I've said about UC years and years. You got to show what you got in the conference, because that's what they're going to judge you on. Not just your out of conference schedule. You can win 12 games out of conference, but you could be playing D3 schools all the time, and that doesn't help you prepare for your conference schedule. So, I mean, that's what I look forward to the most.
I'm with you. That's going to be. It should be a fun game to watch. I'm going to have to go with Michigan State. I may be a little biased about that. I am a Spartans fan, but it's hard to go against a rivalry quite like this. This is the Battle of Michigan. This is all about who wants to rule the state. And both teams are now ranked. Michigan just jumped into the top 25. They're at 21 right now after wins against Penn State, and then on the road against Wisconsin. Huge win for them. And this, like I said, this is going to be a fun one to watch. Now, last year, it was obviously going to be a little bit different. Trey Burke's no longer around. Tim Hardaway Jr. is no longer around. But Michigan State had a lot coming back. And frankly, they played the last couple of games without their star player in Adrian Payne. And it's allowed other people to step up and play bigger than what they're used to. If Adrian Payne does not play in this game against Michigan, Michigan has a legitimate shot. If they can shoot it like they're capable of, Michigan has a shot to win this game. If Adrian Payne plays, there's no way I can go against the Spartans in this one. Now, at home in the Breslin Center, it's hard to go against that. Stauskas, I can never say his name, for Michigan. He's leading the team in scoring. He's going to be shut down by Gary Harris, in my opinion. Gary Harris is one of the best perimeter defenders in college basketball.
Now, I will say this. Sparty did struggle against OSU. And I know there's some people say, well, you know what, Michigan is complete opposite of OSU and their talent. But, there are some times where you over-anticipate and you fall on your feet and you play sloppy. So let's hope that Sparty doesn't fall into that trap.
Well, I think Sparty played sloppy in that case, because they went, we're up 17 points with 8 minutes to go. We don't need to keep playing. We got this in the bag. They need to play 40 minutes, period. And I'm not just talking about against Michigan. They need to play that no matter what. There needs to be a level of consistency in that. And that's not a Tom Izzo team that I would expect to see not play for 40 minutes. But, I mean, frankly, this one just has Sparty written all over it. When they go to Michigan, when they have to go to Ann Arbor, it could be an entirely different story. Like, I would not. It's hard to win road games in the Big Ten.
But they just knocked off Wisconsin at Wisconsin. So you got to keep that in mind and say,
who would Wisconsin played? Wisconsin hasn't played a tough schedule. So yes, they were undefeated, but they hadn't shown it against a lot of great teams. Michigan State has played a lot of great teams this year. They did lose to UNC, but they've beaten Kentucky. They've beaten Texas. All right, they've beaten Ohio State. Right. They've won against a lot of good teams. something, and they've shown that they can win late even when they play sloppy.
Right.
So I like Michigan State in this game, but I'm not willing to just simply award it over to them. Michigan will come to play because it's a rivalry like that.
Yeah, I mean, despite whether for me, yeah, you can say that they haven't played anyone, but at the same time, like, it doesn't matter whether they had one loss or two losses or were undefeated. They beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin, which is a hard enough task to begin with. So,
But Ryan Face.
so Sparty fans and Sparty Nation just need to be careful and just hope that Michigan State doesn't fall flat and lay an egg, because Michigan is one of those teams that some people may not take them seriously, and they'll make
after
you
they're
bet.
not, after they played non-conference, how they played it for their non-conference schedule, you can see why.
Mhm.
But they're turning on at the right as conference play is starting. So with that, Sparty, you got to be ready for this one. Don't let me down, But let's go ahead and move on from basketball, and we're gonna get into our final segment where let's talk some mock drafts, NFL mock drafts. McShay and Kuiper, they're the two stars of the mock draft experience, have come out with their first two. So we're gonna go ahead and start with McShay's. We're gonna say the top 5. Then we're gonna do our favorite pick from that one, our questionable pick or so from that one, and then our surprise from that one.
One thing we do have to take note of, McShay, when he did release his first mock draft, he did make it before the end of the season. So some of the picks aren't where they are now, which is where Kuiper's are. His order is more solidified than McShay's.
Exactly. So McShay, top 5 picks. He had Teddy Bridgewater going to Houston. Teddy Bridgewater is from Louisville. Jake Matthews out of Texas A&M would go to St. Louis, and that pick's from the trade that they made when RG3 was drafted. So the Washington Redskins do not have a first-round pick this year. They gave it up to St. Louis for that one. Then we have Blake Bortles out of Central Florida going to Oakland at number 3. Johnny Manziel also out of Texas A&M to Jacksonville at number 4, and then Jadeveon Clowney would go to Atlanta out of South Carolina at number 5. Now, Chad, give me your favorite pick from this one.
For McShay, oh man, my favorite pick for McShay's mock draft has to be Marquise Lee to Detroit. He has him picking Marquise Lee at 15th overall, which I think is a great pick. I think it's a steal. It addresses their need of a second receiver. I think he could go in there and fill it. Broyles, I believe his name is, really is farther down the depth chart. I don't see him making any significant impact, unfortunately, unless something devastating happens to that team. But overall, if you can get wide receiver caliber of Marquise Lee that late in the draft, a middle round pick, that's a steal in my mind. And I think if you can get a steal and address the need at the same time, you got to take it.
Hard to turn that down, exactly. With me, I look at Mike Evans. Now, you might hear a theme from me because I do love Mike Evans. I have a bit of a crush on him, is what it sounds like.
So basically, you don't need to say, show me the money. It's just show me Mike Evans.
Exactly. Mike Evans is incredibly talented. When you have Johnny Manziel throwing the ball around like he does sometimes, making very, very bad decisions, and Mike Evans somehow comes down with the ball, that's a pretty good receiver right there.
It's like Calvin Johnson.
Exactly.
Minus the speed.
Chad, you're reading my mind. Now McShay has Mike Evans going to Baltimore. I don't necessarily like that from the perspective of the Bengals, where I have to see him twice a year. But if I don't like seeing him twice a year, I would say that's a pretty good pick. If we're trying to avoid seeing him, that's a good pick. So I have to go with Mike Evans. He's listed at 6'4", 220. I would not be surprised if he's bigger than that. He just goes up for the ball. He's a red zone threat that they really don't have anymore with the loss of Anquan Bolden. And basically they're going to have him fill Anquan Bolden's shoes, and they got a younger version of it. I would say that's a pretty good pick right there.
Can't do anything about it.
Now, Chad, who's your questionable or maybe expected bust?
For McShay, I'm going to say questionable for McShay was really Scott Creighton, defensive end out of Oregon State. And he has him going to Cincinnati Bengals.
And that's at 24. So it would be a late first round pick on that one.
Yeah, at 24. I just don't feel that defensive end is a need that we should be drafting. We have bigger needs that we can be dealing with, specifically cornerback. You have solid cornerbacks that are available that we should be drafting. Defensive end, even though we are 99%, 95% going to lose Michael Johnson, we just don't have the money. He's not going to accept the franchise tag if we were to again. He's going to leave. But we have Marcus Hunt, who did decent in his limited time playing, and we have Wallace Gilbert, who, if there was one person on the Bengals defense who I think may have been underappreciated or whatever, or wasn't given enough attention, it's him. He stepped up as much as anyone could have stepped up and had a terrific season.
And if you look at the Bengals' history when it comes to drafting, they gotten a lot of their key defensive players later in the draft. Not in the first round, later in the draft.
Later in the draft. And it's not just defense, it's offense. I mean, you have Giovanni Bernard, not a first-round pick. You have this is Iffy Waters. I'm entering him right now. Andy Dalton, second-round pick. Yeah, we don't. Bengals fans don't necessarily are iffy about the pick, given that we see Colin Kaepernick doing what he's doing. However,
at the time that was a good pick. At the time that was the right call.
And it wasn't a first. You got a quarterback for half the money, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to keep those into consideration. If you can get one of these defensive ends or defensive tackles or whatever, big money positions in the set, potentially for much cheaper and get just as much production, take it.
Exactly. And going along with that, Vontaze Burfict was undrafted. And he's our best defensive player.
I called that. I'm like, you know what? I kept track of him throughout his senior season. I'm like, this guy's great. Puts up great production. I knew that his attitude problems would hurt his draft stock. But when I saw he went undrafted, I'm like, you know what? We really need to get him. It would be great. And look what he's done. And that shows a testament not only to Mike Zimmer, but our new linebacking coach, who's now our defensive coordinator. So.
No, I'm right. I'm with you on that one.
So what's your questionable pick?
I got to go Derek Carr, and McShay has Derek Carr going 6th overall to the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm not saying the Cleveland Browns don't need a quarterback, because they sure as heck do. My question is Derek Carr the answer? Because right now, what it looks to me is a lot like the Christian Ponder pick, because McShay has Teddy Bridgewater going number 1, Blake Bortles going number 3, Johnny Manziel going number 4. Sounds a little panicky to me where they go, we got to get a quarterback or we're not going to get one at all. So they take Derek Carr. Derek Carr could be a very good player. We haven't seen a whole lot of really good quarterbacks, though, coming from these smaller programs. You look at the guys who have really good success in college, Case Keenum, for example. Now, I know Houston's a mess, so it's hard to use that, but he didn't necessarily play that well in Houston. You look at another guy Kellen Moore. He was the star of the Boise State team. What is he doing right now? I think he's the third-string quarterback for the Lions. The fact of the matter is these smaller school quarterbacks don't seem to work out a lot less than these bigger ones do. So from that perspective right there, I would say it's a bit of a question mark. And then from the fact that Derek Carr, I just don't see as being one of the best 6 players in the draft. I would say early second round is where he would be best fit. Or you could trade up late into the first round, and I think that'd still be okay as well.
I mean, and hitting on the whole smaller school note as well, that's why I feel there's probably a lot of people that don't know how to judge Blake Bortles. Playing for University of Central Florida. He put up decent numbers. Now, they weren't outstanding. They weren't Heisman-esque.
He played better teams, though. You do have to give him that because he played in the American compared to the Mountain West.
But you look at his stats, they aren't eye-popping. And he's projected to go higher. Now, I do agree that would be I would go with Blake Bortles over Derek Carr. So, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting the Browns and Bengals are the same. It's always interesting to see what pick they choose and what they think will satisfy the fans and the team and how wrong they are. So
I'm right there with you. All right, surprise pick. Who do you got, Chad?
for McShay, going back to Cleveland for the second pick of the first round,
Which they got from the Trent Richardson trade.
from the Trent Richardson trade. Now, take into account, McShay has them picking Carr with their first pick of the first round. He has them going with Jordan Matthews, wide receiver out of Vanderbilt, with their second pick.
And I believe that's at 24th. Or maybe 25th. Or hang on, let me pull that up. I'm going to look silly. It's 23rd. Here we go. It's 23rd, guys.
It's 23rd overall. And Jordan Matthews is a great receiver. Don't get me wrong. He's
He
done great.
has records in the SEC for, I believe, both yards, receptions, and touchdowns. I believe he has all those records in the SEC.
And this is a surprise pick to me, mainly based on need. And I feel that wide receiver is not a need they should be addressing first round. They do need a receiver, but they're not that desperate. What they need and is running back. You got solid running backs in this draft. You have Carlos Hyde, who had a good career at Ohio State, and I think that's a better choice because you don't have a running back, and that's assuming that you're going to be able to land someone like Ben Tate. Yes, he's going to want to look at teams where he could potentially win the starting running back job, but at the same time, as any player does, he wants to win. And if he doesn't feel like the future is bright and sunny and will give him wins in the near future, he won't go unless they pull out the red carpet and they overpay him by a lot.
And you talk about Carlos Hyde. We're going to get into Mel Kiper's in a sec. Mel Kiper actually has them taking Carlos Hyde in the late first round. So sounds like Kiper's in agreement with you. But, I think we both agree the Browns do have a lot of positions to take care of. Just sometimes some are, you got to see what's available at the time.
Right.
For me, I have to say my surprise pick is Khalil Mack. And not because Khalil Mack is going to a team I question, is getting drafted high, in the first round, and I don't think he's a first-round pick. My surprise with Khalil Mack is the fact that he's a MAC linebacker. Plays in the Mid-American Conference. I don't hear about Mid-American Conference players getting drafted in anything in the first round, let alone the NFL draft. Khalil Mack is a heck of a player. Khalil Mack deserves all the praise that we are giving him because he is going to be a solid, at worst, solid NFL linebacker.
And one thing you got to note, he must be doing something right if scouts and analysts like Mel Kiper and McShay are taking note of a MAC player. Because
Exactly.
many people look down on the MAC as a poor conference.
It kind of is.
As a conference that doesn't have much talent, that is the little brother or little sister to the big schools, which it is, and understandably so. But you still have great players coming out of the MAC, but they're not drafted in the first round. They're drafted later rounds or undrafted. You have James Harrison, I believe, came out of Kent State. You have some good players.
Antonio Gates was also out of Kent State. Greg Jennings, Western Michigan. We've had players that have had success from the MAC in the NFL, but they weren't taken in the first round.
No.
These are not guys that are going to be taken in the early rounds. And I should say that Khalil Mack was taken by Minnesota at number 8. So, yeah, like I said, top 10 pick. Not normally seen from MAC players. It's a surprise to me. It's a happy surprise, I should say. It's not something that I really question. I look forward to watching him at the pro level. I watched him, play against some MAC teams this year, and he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, the one thing I'm interested in seeing is how he adjusts to this new lifestyle he's about to encroach upon of not only being that star player at Buffalo like he was but he may have been the star player there, but it was still in a smaller conference, so he's not under the lights as what he's about to be. He's going to be that. He's not only a first-round pick, he's a top 10 first-round pick. The expectations grow larger, much, much larger. And the question is, can will he be able to live up to those expectations quicker than some of these past first rounders by Minnesota, especially because Sharif Floyd last year, they had a great first round draft. They really didn't produce that well this past
Outside of
season.
Cordero Patterson, yeah.
And you just got to wonder, how can he do under the big lights of the NFL football as a top 10 draft pick?
I'm absolutely with you. Let's go ahead and move on to Kuiper's draft. Top 5 for Kuiper. He went a little bit differently. He has Johnny Manziel going number 1 out of Texas A&M to Houston, so staying at home for the most part. He too has Jake Matthews going number 2 to St. Louis from that Washington pick. So we should be seeing a new left tackle in St. Louis, according to these to both Kuiper and McShay. He has Jadeveon Clowney, instead of going 5th, he has him going to number 3, and that's for Jacksonville, who passed over him in McShay's draft. Blake Bortles will go to number 4 to Cleveland, so they assess that quarterback need that I think we both agree on. And then Sammy Watkins goes number 5. He's from Clemson, and he'll be going to Oakland. So Chad, what's your favorite pick?
My favorite pick, actually, for this draft, Khalil Mack to Tampa Bay. A huge part of that is Lovie Smith coming to Tampa Bay, bringing a defensive mind to this team that already has a very talented defense. Now imagine this a linebacking core that has both Khalil Mack and Levante David as 2 potential outside linebackers, along with the solid defensive backs that they already have. In Deshaun Goldston, they have Barber, I believe, and they have Mark Barron as well. They have a solid defense, and they have McCoy in there. They have Claiborne that's done solid. He's been under the radar, had a decent career at Iowa. He's struggled some with injuries, but he's been putting up some numbers in Tampa since he was drafted. So I'm interested in that pick. I think it's a good pick for them, and I think the theory that Lovie Smith will bring is a offense by defense to Tampa Bay. You'll score their points via defense and rely less on the offense, which could be good.
No, that's a fun one to watch. Khalil Mack. We just got done talking about him. He's going to be a great player. I'm sticking with the theme here. If you remember my favorite pick from McShay's draft,
show me the Evans.
It was Mike Evans, baby. And this one, I gotta go Mike Evans again. He's got Mike Evans instead of going to Baltimore at number 20. He has Mike Evans up at number 13 to the St. Louis Rams. One thing we know about the St. Louis Rams is they haven't had a stable wide receiving core for the last couple of years.
They haven't had a stable quarterback either.
That's fair. The last time they really had stability at the wide receiver position, they were rocking Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce. And I don't even know if either of them.
Marshall Faulk may have been the running back at that time.
Exactly. It's been a while. So you look at the fact that they drafted last year in the first round Tavon Austin. He did not get a whole lot of opportunities to show the ability he had, in my opinion. But it doesn't help that he's also, I think, 5'9". So he doesn't have a whole lot of height. And then they also drafted in the later rounds Stedman Bailey, teammate of Tavon Austin out of West Virginia, who also doesn't have a whole lot of height. This is a guy, Mike Evans, that can bring in some height to this wide receiving core, become again that red zone threat. This is a great pick for them if they can get a little more stability from Sam Bradford, and maybe Sam Bradford will play better because he has the weapons around him.
See, you pinpointed something that I was going to say. Giving him these weapons, you have Tavon Austin, which I hope this upcoming season he'll get more time. I agree. I don't think he was given the right amount of time. You got to wonder how long of a leash Bradford will be on. They drafted him number 1 overall, and I get that, but he hasn't produced to the number 1 overall standards. To the
and
big money
for them. Yeah, this was
big
under
money
the big
contract
money.
before the CBA.
Exact CBL.
He's CBA, collective bargaining agreement.
I know
the CBA, but he's still connected with that big contract, and he's not producing. No matter what, your quarterback, the expectations are even larger than what I was talking about with Khalil Mack, and you're given these weapons now. No excuses. You got to produce. When you have Tavon Austin, when you have Stedman Bailey. I think he could be just as impactful if you give him the time.
Geno Smith had a really good year at West Virginia with those two wide receivers. They can play at any level. The problem is that they're not very big, so you have to get them out in space. You have to make sure they get the ball. So unfortunately, a lot of the plays that you have to give them the ball on are like screens, but that's easy to defend
Or
after
wide receiver runs.
or runs. I mean, but the point is that it becomes easy to defend when you've seen it 3 or 4 times in the same game. So they're going to have to find creative ways to get these guys the ball, and one way to do that is to limit the coverage on them because everyone's focused on Mike Evans.
Right. I mean, another way, if you really want to give him the ball and get him production, is if you want to set up a trade with the Jets because they need wide receivers and Geno Smith needs help. You just trade Stedman Bailey and Tavon Austin back to the New York Jets, and they could be all buddy again in New York. And
I don't think that helps the Rams, but I like where your head's at here. All right, Chad, let's go to our questionable or maybe expected busts with Kuipers. Take it away.
Bradley Roby out of Ohio State. They have him going to the San Diego Chargers late round. I don't think he's a first round pick. I don't. I think for corners, there are a couple they have him selecting at 25 overall. You have Denard out of Michigan State, and you have the other corners that were projected have since decided to stay.
Well, there is Justin Gilbert out of Oklahoma State.
Right.
But I mean, this is not as strong of a draft in defensive backfield as maybe has been the last couple of years. I do agree with that.
He's been don't get me wrong, Roby has been solid. I just don't. I think he'll fall to the second round. I think that's where he belongs. He just wasn't outstanding in any way, and I just think that there's better things for them to address. I think they probably could use a tight end, another one, plan for the future with Gates, and maybe implement a 2 tight end set. You have some solid tight ends that you can get in that late of the round. You have Amaro. You have
Ebron.
You have Ebron from North Carolina. You have Amaro from, I believe, Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
2 solid choices. And if they're available at that point, if I'm San Diego, I'd say, hey, you know what? Gates has been doing fine for us. He's been a franchise player for us. At the same time, there does come a time where you have to look at your depth chart and you have to say, you know what? Father Time will be knocking on our door soon. And if we have a solid choice of a tight end available that is at our doorstep that we can, I'd answer the door and say, hey, come on in. Like, welcome to the Chargers, because that's definitely a position that they need to address.
I'm with you. Roby's not necessarily a guy I would take in the first round, but sometimes he that's one of those surprise picks that we could end up seeing, where maybe there's a little bit of a stretch, and I mean that's kind of why you have him under that expected bust. For me, I got to go Sammy Watkins. I think he has a great name because his name is Sam, or Sammy in this case. But taking him at number 5 is a little questionable to me. First rounder, no doubt. He's a first round pick. But I look at a little history here. I'm going to get a little history. In 2009, the Oakland Raiders took another speedy wide receiver. Maybe not the best hands.
That's the Al
but
Davis.
Speed. That was the Al Davis. That was classic Al Davis. They took Darius Hayward-Bay at number 7 overall. Well, let's look at those wide receivers taken in that draft after Darius Hayward-Bay. He was the first wide receiver taken. At number 10, Michael Crabtree. All right. At number 19, we have Jeremy Maclin. Number 22, Percy Harvin. Number 29, Hakeem Nicks. At number 30, Kenny Britt. And then we get into the 3rd round, and we have at number 84, Mike Wallace. We're looking at some solid wide receivers there, and some have been to the Pro Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Has Darius Hayward-Bay even had numbers to warrant him in the Pro Bowl? Absolutely not. And also taking that draft, while not a wide receiver, LaShawn McCoy, Max Unger, Clay Matthews, Alex Mack, Brian Cushing.
Right. Solid players being taken behind him. One thing that you do need to take into account, I agree, I mean, that's Al Davis's mantra, I guess. Take speedy receivers.
Well, Al Davis is gone now, and they're still looking like they want to do that. And I just kind of see another bust from that.
However, you look at the quarterbacks that have been managing those offenses,
Questionable at best.
questionable. Terrell Pryor has done the best that he can.
TP's
do.
not feeling this, okay?
He's not. But you know, the only player that you named that I would hesitate to jump the gun on in terms of saying he's much better than Darius Hayward-Bay is Percy Harvin. He had solid seasons with Brett Favre in Minnesota. In the general spectrum, he's dealt with a lot of injuries that has cost him a lot of time. So that's one advantage that Hayward-Bay has had over Harvin in particular is his health. So,
but in terms of talent, I think we can all agree Darius Hayward-Bay is not any of these guys.
He's not a fifth rounder. I mean, fifth overall.
And well, he was taken seventh, and Sammy Watkins taken fifth. I think Sammy Watkins would do best going to a team that's already established, that maybe has a number one already. So maybe a Detroit Lions, maybe a Cincinnati Bengals. You know, where you have that number one guy, no question. He's who you're going to be passing the ball most to, and Sammy Watkins kind of fills that in, kind of like his former teammate DeAndre Hopkins. That's what DeAndre Hopkins was. He was that fill-in while Andre Johnson was on the other side. It took some of the eyes off of Andre Johnson.
Took pressure off him.
But the fact of the matter is, he was that Andre Johnson was still number one, and I think that's what Sammy Watkins needs. And he does not need to be going to the Oakland Raiders, where he will be the number one guy.
I think a better fit for him. I think it'll help both the quarterback and him. The only problem is he would still. I would call him a hybrid of a number one, number two wide receiver because they don't have a solid number one. The Jets. I've seen mock drafts where they have the Jets picking up Sammy Watkins, which would give Geno Smith that weapon to go to. The Jets, Santonio Holmes, solid receiver, but Father Time has caught up with him, I believe, with injuries, and he just hasn't been putting up the stats that he used to, and he has a whole different quarterback. You're used to playing with Ben Roethlisberger, and now you're going to Geno Smith. You know, what are you supposed to do? You know, so I'm interested in seeing where Sammy Watkins lands. I think whoever lands him is a lucky team. That's for sure.
I'm with you. All right, so, Chad, let's finish up with our surprise picks from Kuiper's draft. Take it away.
Looking at his mock draft, the one that surprised me is Brandon Cooks out of Oregon State, wide receiver. He's a solid guy, solid wide receiver. Had great season teaming up with his quarterback, Sean Mannion. Had terrific numbers. Problem being, he's a short receiver. He, last year, 2013, he had 128 receptions, 1,730 yards, averaging 13.5 yards per reception, along with 55 yards, 16 touchdowns total. He had two more rushing for just under 300 yards. Problem being, he's 5'7". He's 5'7". He's 5'10". Sorry, 5'10". He's a short.
Height is definitely a factor.
Height is definitely a factor. But listen to this: the three main receivers on the Carolina Panthers right now: Ted Ginn, 5'11", Brandon LaFell, 6'2", Steve Smith, 5'9". And you're wanting someone who's 5'10" to come up and make a huge impact. That's asking a lot. You need some height. You need a receiver like Benjamin out of Florida State, 6'4", 6'5". You have another the Clemson receiver, I believe, went pro. He's
Bryant is his last name.
He's 6'4", 6'5" as well. And he's not even projected in the first round. That'd be a steal. So I think the problem is Brandon Cooks is a solid receiver. Not taking anything away from him. Great skill set. I see him kind of like a Tavon Austin in a sense. But the height, they don't need to add another 5-foot dude. They need some more height so Cam Newton doesn't have to always rely on throwing lasers to the guys to make sure they catch the ball, but he could throw it up a small touch pass and have great confidence that his receiver is going to come down with
The
it.
only guy he has that with is his tight end,
Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen. But he's a tight end. He's not going to be able to outjump many guys. Like
And
that.
you wonder why he's his favorite receiver to go to, because he has the height. Greg Olsen, 6'5", the tallest guy between the receivers and tight ends is Greg Olsen. So what it comes down to, it's just not a perfect match. They can go with wide receiver. I think that's a solid choice, a position to focus on. Brandon Cooks isn't the guy, so it's just we'll see what they end up doing on draft day. But what about your surprise pick?
I'm gonna go maybe a little more positive end. You kind of yours was kind of the I don't know if I want to do that. Mine is I got a few guys that
Show me the money.
I got a few guys here. One's Darqueze Dennard going to the Cincinnati Bengals at number 24. I don't see Dennard falling that far because
And he chose not to do the Senior Bowl because he didn't want to see his stock fall.
exactly Darqueze Dennard. I just don't see him being available when the Bengals pick, and he's a heck of a cornerback. Like if the Bengals could get him, I would be so happy.
It would relieve a lot of pressure from Leon Hall.
Exactly.
And I mean, we saw Drake Kirkpatrick, once he was given time due to injuries with Terrence Newman, grow. He has a lot more growing to do, and I understand that. But
The good news is for Dennard is you're lessening some pressure on Leon Hall, but you're also lessening pressure on Darqueze Dennard because he doesn't have to be the number one guy because you have a Leon Hall. The other guy that I kind of look at as kind of a surprise pick is Teddy Bridgewater. He falls as the number 8 to Minnesota. Good pick for them. They're getting a quarterback. But he's fallen to number 8. I mean, that surprises me. Like this is a guy that just 4 weeks ago we were talking about number 1, no questions. This is the number 1 overall pick, and we're having him fall down to number 8. And at that point, you could see him falling even farther. It's just a matter of the fact that I think that Teddy Bridgewater, because he tends to be a safer pick, doesn't necessarily have that upside that a Johnny Manziel does. That's why maybe he's a better fit at number 1 because you can't go wrong at number 1. You're already the worst team in the league. If you do that again, you're gonna have a lot of people fired.
See, here's when you analyze Bridgewater and Manziel back-to-back resumes and stuff. A couple things you need to consider or think about. Manziel is a dangerous quarterback. He has the magic on the field, and we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
However, he plays with a reckless abandon like RG3 did in his first year, and that's hurt him. So people have been, they've been on and off Manziel saying, with how crazy he is, how long is he going to be in the league? And Teddy Bridgewater, his problem is, I think a lot of people are looking at his resume, his overall college resume, and looking at his strength of schedules, his stats, and they aren't mesmerized by it. It's not like, oh, like here I am. This is like I am the best resume.
And some of that is having watched him this year. This was the Heisman favorite coming into this season.
Struggled against a mediocre Miami team in the bowl game.
Exactly. But the fact is that Bridgewater did nothing to improve his stock this year. But that doesn't mean that he's not worthy of the number 1 overall pick.
Well, I think another thing that I've heard in different outlets is just we can all pinpoint the first time we heard Teddy Bridgewater to the bowl game against Florida. That's when he made his presence known. He got himself on the big board. Is that performance? Since then, it's been a very steady up and down, and nothing to really wow you to the point where it's like, oh, he's a for sure number 1 pick. Or, no, he's definitely not a number 1 pick. The Texans are still wavering. And the Texans are already a team that shortly after they fired Gary Kubiak, the owner had said they're open to possibly trading down, trading the number 1 pick away. So you got to keep that in mind. When these mock drafts are coming out, they're saying the Texans are picking number 1. We still got to factor in the trades, what trades may be done. And the Texans have already said that they may be open to trading the number 1 pick. The Browns have already made it clear that they're open to doing whatever. They're open to trading up or making a trade to get Johnny Manziel. Do I feel that Johnny Manziel is the quarterback for the Browns? From a PR aspect and from a fan aspect to please the fans, I think it would be. He brings the magic to the field. He's someone people like to hate.
He's got some swagger about
He
him.
does, but for a team that's trying to build themselves to be a respectable team, to get a quarterback that is reckless is worrisome. That's why I see Blake Bortles being a safer pick for Cleveland, or Teddy Bridgewater, one of those two, than Johnny Manziel. I just think
It's the upside.
Right.
It's the fact that Johnny Manziel has been getting comparisons to Brett Favre. Not that Brett Favre can run like Johnny Manziel, but the fact that it's that gunslinging mentality that's just like, all right, I'm just gonna throw it and just let someone go up and get it.
and that's worrisome.
That would scare me as
You see some of the throws that Andy Dalton does, and
Don't even remind me.
I
Don't
mean,
even remind me.
gunslinging with reckless abandon. You just put your hand in your face and you're like, "What did I just see?"
Yes.
So, another thing that he's gonna have to grow a lot in the NFL. So another thing to consider is, do you have a quarterback? He needs to be put in a situation, and this is rare. Like Rodgers should feel lucky to be put in the situation he was. Yeah, he didn't have a great relationship with Brett Favre, but he had someone like him to mentor him. And Manziel going to the Browns doesn't have a quarterback really to mentor him, really. And that's not good because he needs to be taught. He needs to mature a little. He doesn't have Mike Evans anymore. That's why I threw it up so many times, is because 9 times out of 10, Mike Evans would come down with the ball.
It will. Josh Gordon can do that for him if he were to go to the Browns. My kind of last point on this is with you're talking about the Browns moving up, is just the fact that it's going to come down to what kind of coach they get. If that coach doesn't want Johnny Manziel, they're not getting Johnny Manziel.
I would hope.
The coach will have more say about this pick than we're probably thinking as of now. So let's not lock anything in. But yes, but I just want to say my surprise being Teddy Bridgewater just kind of falling that far. And this is just what makes the draft beautiful.
Yes.
Anything can happen.
Anything.
You could have a team trade into the first round for 3 first-round picks. You know who did that last year? Minnesota.
I mean, and then you have the needle in the haystacks of Tom Brady's. You have
fall into the 6th round. Exactly. This is the beauty of the NFL draft, where we won't know anything until 10 years down the road when we see what their career turned out to be. It's going to be
Russell Wilson last year.
He fell to the third round 2 years ago.
Out of the main 3 quarterbacks drafted in that draft, who was the most successful?
Possibly Russell Wilson. You could still talk about Andrew Luck, but yes, I see exactly what you're saying. It's this is what we're gonna have to look forward to. And here's the other thing. These are just their first ones. We're gonna see a lot of changes depending on combines, trades, free agency,
pro days.
A lot can change, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We thank you for tuning in to our first show. Signing off for the Chad and Sam Sports Hour. I'm Sam Mullins.
My name is Chad Bryan.
Hey, thanks for listening, guys.